will be read by staff during that agenda item, and written and email comments for public comment will be read under item 3, public comment. And let's go ahead and begin with our roll call for today. I know Tyler's been doing that. Should I do it or does it? Okay, I'll go ahead and I'm going to do it. Okay. Let's see, Director Hogan.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
And Director Bone.
Yep.
Great. And I know that we don't yet have Director Schaefer from the City of Arcata. She can't make it today, so we look forward to welcoming her at the next meeting we have. Okay, and let's go ahead and move to the consent calendar. Oh, Jill, you're muted. Was that intentional that you're muted? Okay.
It was intentional, but we haven't heard anything from Robin. So Robin Smith with the City of Ferndale. So I am trying to look to see if he comes in.
Okay, sure, yeah, and we'll note that. Thank you, and we'll note that when he does, hopefully when he does arrive. We have quorum though, so we'll keep moving forward. Let's move to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the HWMA board and will be enacted upon by one motion unless a specific request for review is made by a board member or member of the public. The consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless pulled for discussion. And we have several different items on the consent calendar. Has anyone requested any item to be pulled?
No.
Okay, so we'll take the consent calendar as a whole. Does anyone want to make a motion regarding the consent calendar?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion by Director Bone and seconded by Director Hogan. Any other, does anyone wish to make any comments regarding the consent calendar? Okay. You never know. Well, let's go ahead and take the vote on that. Board Member Bone?
Yep.
And Hogan?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Great. And we still do not have Robin present. I also vote aye, and motion passes unanimously. Okay. We'll move on. We'll just do this oral communications. Let's see, this is the time provided for people to address the HWMA board or submit written communications on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral and written communications, the board may respond to statements. Any request that requires board action will be set by the board for a future agenda or for referral to staff. As I mentioned before, public comment was accepted via email and in writing earlier today. Were there any comments, Director Duffy, to be read into the?
We have not received any. I will double check with Tyler if you've seen anything come through before 5 o'clock.
I have not seen anything, and I don't see any hands up.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any members of the public present who would wish to make public comment? Looking for hands. Oh, I see one. We do have Maggie Gaynor present who wishes to make public comment. Go right ahead, Maggie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just jumped in. I'm not sure if she's here this evening with you, but we have hired our new project manager, Jess Barger. We're excited. She's smart and high energy, and will one by one be contacting your different staff in your different cities just to see how things are going and ways that we can help you with waste reduction. there was like one other quick announcement that I wanted to make. I guess I'll just leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Thank you. And it's nice to see you. Any other items for public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to agenda item number 4, receive waste awareness presentation by Allison Poklemba of For Our Planet. Hello, Allison.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, is that coming through okay? Excellent, thank you. So I am going to just tell you a little bit about our For Our Planet Waste Awareness Education Program, which is a project funded by the HWMA, and show you how we have morphed our classroom-based education program to make it through this pandemic year when nearly all classrooms in Humboldt County were not receiving people in person. So let's take a look here. This is how we are used to teaching students. We provide a comprehensive series of programs for mostly elementary age, but modified for older students on a per request basis about the 4 R's. You know what they are. The last R, including rot or composting. So we take a look at all these different ways that we can reduce waste in our lives. And these programs that we've developed are really hands-on. So we had a big challenge this year of how to take this type of education program that really gets kids interacting with us, with each other, with the materials at hand. Here are 2 kids in 1st grade exploring compost and looking for the critters that live in compost and do the work of recycling our food scraps into high quality soil amendment. How do we take that and make it work for a situation like this, which most Humboldt County students found themselves in this year, working in isolation, really, or through their iPad or their laptop or their Chromebook. And if they were lucky, possibly with 1 or 2 pandemic buddies that they could team up with. And we found ourselves in the position of needing to do a pandemic pivot, as many folks needed to do, teachers especially. And I want to give a shout out to a wonderful woman that I worked with in doing that this year, Haley Connors Keith, who joined me in Zooming into classrooms around the county, because that is what one needs to do when you want to teach during a pandemic. So we took our 5-part program and we streamlined it into 2 parts for this project. Part 1, the weight of our waste, was really like a recycling and waste reduction training for kids. We targeted kindergarten through 5th grades, though we did meet with some middle school classes as well, and a few high school students here and there. So the first thing when looking at how to reduce waste is to figure out just how much you are making and how quickly it piles up. So I know that you probably made some trash today. Maybe not everyone, maybe not you, Maggie, but most of us made at least a little bit. And on average, we're all coming up with a big bag, maybe not this big, but pretend with me for a moment, if you will, that you are holding your bag of trash, 4.5 pounds on average. And at the count of 3, please toss it into the landfill here, because that's where our trash is going. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, do we get everyone's? Frank, was that yours? All right, Jill, let it in. There it is. Okay, good. It really adds up. So we need to look at if we really need to be throwing all this stuff away, and that it comes down to our choices, and that our choices with each discard, with each unwanted item in our hands, really can add up to a big difference. And the power is in our hands of deciding what to do with these things. And some choices that we make more trash. Some make less trash. But the issue is that we have so many choices out there. And so with students, we walk through all sorts of different scenarios and how the power of your purchasing decisions, not all applesauce is created equal, can really impact the amount of trash that you are producing. And then we get into part 2. Well, where do these things go once you make the choice to either throw it away or recycle it? And so we take our classes on a virtual behind the scenes tour of the different facilities involved with handling your discarded material. And so it starts with a choice: trash can or the recycling bin, one being a dead end street, one keeping materials alive and in circulation. Cereal box, what are you going to do with it there? All right, starting with the trash, let's see where it goes. You see these getting picked up by the trash trucks, headed to the transfer station, a place you all know very well. And it turns out students from the part 1 of their recycling and waste reduction training are so good at spotting things that should not be in this pile, as I'm sure jump out to you as well. So we look at where these materials go. All the way up to the Dry Creek landfill outside of Medford, Oregon. 4 hours and 6 minutes, 202 miles to get there. A one-way street. So again, looking at footage of the landfills, the students are noticing all these things and are feeling really perplexed. Why is there so much cardboard in there? This is what jumps out to them initially. So those materials are staying there, and the trucks return to pick up more materials. But what if our 3rd grader here had chosen a different path for his unwanted materials and used the recycling bin instead? Thank you, Linda and crew, for inviting us into your facility in Samoa to actually capture some footage of behind the scenes, what this looks like for kids. See where the materials go. And here is our 3rd grader for scale. Those materials still really add up, and yet students are incredible at looking at a picture like this and noticing what doesn't belong. So this is a really important part for us, is keeping things that should not be recycled out of the recycling bins. And we talk about why that matters quite a bit. So I want students to really connect with the fact that their community members are the ones handling their recyclables, sorting them out. And so as I'm taking them on the virtual tour through the facility, I'm sharing with them footage like this so they can see who's doing the work and get a sense for what's involved. And at the end of it, we get this exciting moment, birth of a bale. So here is our same 3rd grader for scale. And so those materials, when they're being recycled, still really pile up. It's all about knowing just what to do with them. And that those bales will get turned into new things, and those materials will be kept in circulation. So what did our outreach efforts look like this year? Well, through the remote classroom visits, we were able to actually do a really great job of reaching schools throughout the county, 17 different schools, 85 remote classroom visits completed, reaching 1,486 students. And here's just a list of what the schools look like, who we reached this year. And at the bottom, you do see Ambrosini School, which is in Fortuna. They are not included in the funding from HWMA since Fortuna is not part of the Waste Management Authority. However, I did not want to deny the students per request of their teachers to have the experience, so we still completed those as well. And you can tell a lot about how the project is working by the little thank you notes that you get from students and what jumps out to them. I used to never know what to do, what to throw away, but now I know. It makes it easier. This this girl says, I really like sharing what we were going to recycle. And so we are giving our presentations, but also allowing time for students to, I asked, as prep, I asked their teachers to have each student come to the Zoom class with 3 items that are unwanted. And so it's amazing what shows up. We talk about, some obvious things to be recycled, as well as all sorts of mystery items. A lot of this in students' lives, the crinkly plastic things or the stretchy film plastic. So we actually get time to handle and talk about the materials and what the options are for avoiding using them or disposing of them responsibly, like in the case of electronic waste or batteries, or how to recycle them. So again, learning a lot about students' experiences through their thank you notes. And also, I put this coffee cup here as a reminder because in the feedback that we get from teachers through surveys too, there's some important things that come up. And one teacher had mentioned specifically that she came to our classes with her Starbucks to-go coffee cup in hand, and then in some ways had a revelation about it while there, and realizing that even in these types of actions that she is being a role model for her students, and that she has changed her ways and is bringing her own reusable cup or making her own coffee at home, bringing that to school instead. And that really stood out to the students, and that in this way, in teaching the students, they are providing positive pressure for their parents back at home to say, hey, why are you putting that in the trash, Mom? That's supposed to go in the recycling. Or, hey, Dad, you don't need to be using that disposable cup from the get-go. So here is what we have planned for this next academic year. We're really going to do a mix of remote lessons and in-person lessons. As you can imagine, the public school landscape still has a number of uncertainties when looking at the year ahead in regard to the pandemic. Some schools are much more open than others at this point. And so we're thinking that we will remain agile with those potential changes. So we will offer still the 2 remote lessons, the race reduction training and the behind the scenes tour. And then we're going to add in 2 of our favorite in-person lessons, the compost critters, exploring how food scraps get turned back into soil, and then also making recycled paper, where we take paper from the recycling bin in the classroom and literally turn it into new sheets along with the students, so they can get a sense of how that process works. And what we have worked out for all these years that we've been doing this project with Humboldt Waste Management Authority is our funding coming down to a cost per visit basis. But obviously there's more expense involved with in-person visits than there is with remote visits. So we have a range of the number of visits that we will be able to accomplish this year. So up to 63 for, I should have had that reversed. That's up to 63 for in-person lessons and up to 80 for remote lessons. So hoping to continue to reach new schools, as well as keep relationships going with schools that we've been working with for a number of years. And I just want to say thank you to all of you at HWMA for feeling that this is an important project, and that teaching our school children how to reduce their waste is important in funding this, this effort to do that. So I'll stop my share with you. Oh, and feel free to be in touch anytime. There's my contact info with questions. And if you have any questions for me, I would love to answer them. And if not, I just want to say thanks again for being able to make this project happen.
Thank you, Allison. Does anyone have any questions? Any of the directors have any questions for Allison?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you, and how amazing it is that you were able to do so much work during the pandemic, because that was definitely not the case with all kind of outreach programs that weren't essential parts of the normal curriculum. So I appreciate all your work. And that was really interesting to see how you do it.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that, Elaine. Yeah, I have to say the schools really appreciated that we were able to make that pivot so quickly for them, because that's really what was needed. And honestly, having us zoom into different classrooms and having a different talking head for their students was refreshing for all.
I was curious, Allison, how many times you typically go to one classroom?
In our typical in-person style, we'd like to do a series of 5 lessons so that we're able to do the waste reduction training, talk about resources and where things come from in the first place and why recycling and reducing waste is important for conserving resources. We talk about composting. We talk about the recycling process and how all the details of that and what does an actual can go through to turn into something new. And then the cumulative experience being the making recycled paper. So 5 visits typically.
Great. Yeah, and just to echo what Director Hogan said, this is really fantastic work, and thanks for doing it. You know, even under changing circumstances. Any other questions or comments from any of the directors? Okay, and then I do see you have a fan, and you know, for for public comment, we do read, or you know, for public meetings, we do read the chat into the public record. So you have a thank you, Allison, from Donna Marias's most awesome class. So you've got fans out there in the world. Anyone? I guess this is a presentation, so we don't typically take public comment. Thank you for sharing your contact information. So if there are any members of the public who want to reach out to Allison, you can do that. Okay, anything else for this presentation?
That concludes the presentation, and just want to say thank you to Allison as well. And the only thing I would add is that if there are teachers who are interested, Allison does a pretty big broadcast just let teachers know that her program is available and whether they're able to fit it into their curriculum. So if there are different schools or teachers who are wanting to take advantage of the opportunity, contact Allison, or go ahead and contact the Humboldt County Office of Education so they could get you in contact with her directly.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, that was fun. Let's move on to item number 5. And this is where this item is to authorize staff to coordinate with Humboldt County Solid Waste Local Task Force to develop and circulate a request for proposal for a regional SB 1383 action plan. And I will turn it over to you, Director Duffy.
Great, thank you. It's kind of a long report, but I'll try to keep it short in the sense that you're all pretty familiar now with SB 1383 and some of the different efforts that are going forward. We are recommending that the board direct myself to be coordinating with members of the Humboldt County Solid Waste Local Task Force for the development and circulation of a request for proposal for SB 1383's action plan. So this is an unusual request in the context of it was originally requested by the SB 1383 ad hoc group that's been meeting about every 2 weeks. And then they made the formal request to the Solid Waste Local Task Force, who did approve this request at their meeting, which was held just this last Tuesday on July 6th. And as you're all familiar, 1386 is related to reduction of short-lived climate pollutants, and the final rules by CalRecycle were released in November of 2020, and the statute dictates that jurisdictions have to be in compliance by January 1st of 2022 for the majority of the programs. With the exception of some of the smaller cities like Blue Lake and Trinidad and Rio Dell and Ferndale, you guys will have until 2024, underneath a waiver provision. And the Humboldt County Solid Waste Task Force is comprised of staff representatives from all of the cities and the county in Humboldt County. So what we're looking to do in order to achieve legislative compliance, they're wanting and they're recommending that the HWMA Board of Directors have us work with them to coordinate the development of a SB 1383 request for proposals for an action plan so that we can then secure a consultant that could develop a roadmap for jurisdictional compliance. And the thing, what everybody needs to keep in mind is everybody is required to meet the same statute requirements. And so by identifying by the different jurisdictions what they have, what they need to meet, and where there's some overlap, there could be some critical pathways that would enable us to do the food recovery, as well as organic diversion programs, and then the identification of other programs and policies as would be appropriate. One of the things that we learned at the meeting this last Tuesday was with the governor's approval of the budget, they are moving 38 individuals in CalRecycle's compliance unit into enforcement. And the budget is also approving an additional 9 people to be hired for the enforcement unit. And this is a pretty different approach that the state is taking. In the past, it has been trying to use the carrot in order to move jurisdictions to comply. In this case, they're coming with more of a stick approach, and they're going to make sure that there are these regulatory repercussions for non-compliance. So, we do recognize that HWMA is responsible primarily for the post-collection. We're not handling any collection out on the streets, and we are managing the waste when it comes into our facility. So we're hoping that, an RFP would be developed that would delineate the different roles of the individual cities and the county, as well as HWMA, and then identify what the additional needs are going to be for us to be in compliance. Needs in this case being some of the organic planning and processing components, so that we can ensure that there's some state compliance. So we are asking that the board, have us work directly with the local task force. We would develop an RFP, we would circulate it. The RFP would then be evaluated by the task force members for responsiveness and a recommendation of the preferred consultant or the consulting firm to be secured. That would come back to the HWMA board in the fall of 2021. The task force is also asking that HWMA work to develop a funding plan. HWMA does not have the money to fund a $100,000 study, nor do any of our jurisdictions, have that money. So, we'll have to figure out how to piece together the funding that will be necessary for the securing of the consultant. So, time is of the essence, and we do have Robin Prasker with the City of Eureka. She has been participating in the local task force. So when I'm finished, I would also offer that if else to add, hear from her. So, alternatively, the board could decline and to refer the solid waste task force directly to the county of Humboldt in order to manage and fund the regional planning effort, because the county is actually the statutorily obligated party for the coordination of many of these activities. Or they could decline and refer the request to each of the jurisdictions, as individuals to take up on their own. The task force representatives have been really quite remarkable, and seeing the opportunity for us to be working in a more regionalized capacity. And so that's the reason that the preferred alternative is to move forward with a regionalized approach. And that concludes my report. I would only ask, Robin, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I would just echo everything you said regarding the times of the essence. We probably should have been talking about this last July versus now. So really the part of moving forward with a consultant would show big strides in being compliant, while by January 1st, we're not going to have an organics facility up and running or have organics collection. We will be having a consultant chipping away at the planning and all of those things. So that's really the most important part, to be compliant in January, is to have the clear strides ahead. So that's kind of our main intent. So yeah, thank you, Jill. You couldn't have said it better.
And that does conclude available to answer any questions. And I would ask Robin to stay on the line also, just in case there may be some questions that she can also answer well.
Do any members of the board have questions for either Director Duffy or Robin? Okay, seeing none, we will open this up. Do any members of the public wish to make public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, do any members of the board wish to make comments or have anything they want to add to the discussion? Well, I'll just say that I'm really glad this is moving forward, and I think this is, in terms of representing Eureka, I think this is going to be a really good solution and direction for Eureka. And yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about the local task force meetings. So thank you to everyone who's bringing so much energy to that process, because I know that it doesn't always have enthusiasm and excitement. No offense. I mean, anyway. And let's see, Director Bone, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'd like to ask, I see Linda Wise here. And since Recology is doing this and many other places are getting ready to, and we don't know what we're doing. Linda, what are you doing in other areas, or what is Recology doing as a whole, since you guys have a little expertise on getting ready for this?
Well, the SB 1383 includes a lot of other parts of organics other than collection and disposal. So the parts of it that we've been helping with, and we're helping Fortuna, Rio Dell, and Ferndale to kind of get a little bit further ahead, was trying to design a franchise agreement that is compliant with 1383. Those are the parts that we can help the communities with. But this law is so big, and everybody's contracts are in different places. For the collection part of it, I think the direction of this, what Jill and Robin have been talking about, is appropriate, because we need to find what the communities, I say we as a Humboldt County resident, need to find out is, where are the gaps in each one of these areas? What needs to be filled? And I really think that this is the way to go. I know that a lot of other counties in our jurisdictions are doing the exact same thing. I've been attending the local task force meetings with this and trying to help as much as we can with it, and try to share what the other counties are doing and how they're putting out RFPs.
And Linda, how are they going to handle it on sovereign nations, i.e. HWMA and places like that?
To tell you the truth, Rex, I haven't gotten that far into it. One of the things that I've had to start thinking about is the changes that we have to do in our transfer stations. That we're evaluating the, what the additional things that we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
So I really haven't gotten that far into it. But I could contact somebody and send you some information, or everybody, if you want me to.
That'd be great. Thank you. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, I don't care, but thank you.
Thank you. Any Director Hogan?
Yeah, I had a question. So the RFP would come back to one option, I guess, is HWMA would put it out. Okay. And what we have experience with RFPs, and what is the timeline for actually releasing it?
So we are actually scheduled to have a meeting next week to talk with the local task force members. And so the task force members are are going to be responsible for the development of the RFP. So we would just become the center point for purposes of being able to do the distribution in addition to receiving and then also fielding any of the calls that come in around clarification and whatnot like that. I do want to clarify what I thought I heard you say. The task force is asking that they would put it together and then release it, and then the consultant recommendation would come back to the HWMA board. Alternatively, the board could say, we want to see the RFP before it's released. The reason that the task force didn't want to go down that path was because it would just take some additional time. So that was just an additional step, but it's really the comfort level of the board. If you would prefer to have it come to the board for review and approval, we can make that work too. So the timeline right now and some of those particulars haven't been developed primarily because we needed to find out whether or not the board would support this effort or not.
Director Wilson, I saw you turned your camera on. Did you have questions or comments that you wanted to add? Not, maybe he can't hear me. Can other people hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Just checking. Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding this item?
I have another question. So do we have an idea of different consultants that other jurisdictions are using that we'll specifically reach out to advertise the RFP when it's released?
Yeah, we will. I've been gathering a list, and then we requested from Cal Recycle a list of consultants that they are aware of that have been providing these types of services. So we probably have about 25 at this juncture. There might be some overlap between the list that they gave me and the one that I've got. There's a few that are going to show up everywhere just because it's been the nature of the work that they've been performing for the last 3-4 years.
Okay, and so the idea is to release the RFP, get the proposals back, and then we figure out where the funding comes from and who contributes how much. I mean, it's strange because we're a JPA, so okay, right. So we don't have to have that figured out beforehand. We just kind of wait and see.
Right. The difficulty right now is we don't have a sense of what the potential costs could be. Because there are a number of cities that have had them done, but because the scope of the service can, be really narrow or it could be really wide, and so it's not a simple one size fits all. So we can expect to see plus or minus, $10,000. It's really going to depend on what the overall scope and approach to, and how detailed we're going to be asking folks to be. So as the Joint Powers Authority, we could take a look at our reserves. That is an option. There may be some other potential funding sources. You'll remember that we were hoping that there would be some funding at Trailer Bill, which was going to provide about $225 million. And that would equate out to about $125,000 per city. But that didn't advance. And so I think task force members were hoping, hey, that could be a really great thing because then we could be pooling that money in order to secure the consultant and the other planners that would be necessary for us to take actions. With the city of Fortuna, they are not a member of the authority, nor is Trinidad, but Merit has already indicated that they will find a way to come up with, their fair share also. So we'll talk about proportionality and some of those other funding mechanisms. It's entirely possible that there may be some funds available through the county as well. So we just don't know yet where all the potential pots are and how we can leverage those pieces together. And it doesn't have to necessarily be paid out the day we sign a contract either, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, I mean, I would hesitate to not take the recommendation of the local task force. They're the ones that have been involved, and this is their recommendation. And at the same time, well, and I recognize the need for large scale planning because it's huge. But on the other hand, I do think it's unfortunate that we don't have anyone, or there's no entity that can help coordinate and help us with it, and that we may end up paying who knows how much to some consultant when we really do need money for implementation. But I do understand that we have to plan and we have to know what we're implementing first. So yeah, if this is the recommendation, I'm happy to support it. It'll be interesting to see what we get back and how we're able to come up with the funding, and also the timeline that they're able to produce like a plan with actual implementation and action steps. Because as you noted, Cal Recycle seems like they're going to focus on enforcement, and so we already know we're going to be behind and possibly having to pay fines for non-compliance. And so yeah, we got to get something going. So thank you.
Director Wilson?
Yeah, I had a couple questions to particularly Jill. You said that funding bill didn't pass?
That's correct.
When was that voted down?
Well, I don't think that it was a request to the governor through the budget appropriation through the governor. So it wasn't a bill that was voted down, but a request to the governor's office to set aside that money.
When was that decision made?
Would have been done when the governor approved the budget on June 15th.
Because we just had a letter that we were sending out to ask for that money. Were we completely behind the ball on that? I mean,
when you say we, are you referring
I'm
to?
talking about the city.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Okay, there was another question. There was another bill before somebody, I think it was a Senate bill, to extend the timeline on this.
That's correct. And actually, it wasn't to extend the timeline. It was to extend the enforcement of the bill. So forgive me, I've been inversing the numbers in my head. It's either 619 or 691. It's one or the other. And
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And so basically that it would direct that Cal Recycle not move into immediate enforcement. It would be for those communities that are demonstrating good faith efforts that they are working to address and develop plans to implement SB 1383 requirements, that they're basically just given a little bit of latitude as compared to those communities that are saying, no, we're not going to do it. That I'm not sure where that particular bill is at this juncture, but that is the one that was also asked by the California League of Cities that all of the cities in the county take positions on. Your board here took a position on it at the June meeting.
All right, because it still seems like everywhere I look, I still don't know really what's asked of us. I guess that's probably a good thing to have this action plan. Is I still don't know. I know we have the ability to delay it for a couple of years, but it's still coming back to us. I still don't know what's totally required of us.
Right.
That's a lot, and we don't have any money to do it. So it's good that we're asking for somebody to put together an action plan so we can ask somebody. We get some definitive answers where our responsibilities lay. Right.
There is a present video, that is available on Cal Recycle's website. It's a couple of years old now. I will forward a link to you. It's 3 minutes long. It does sort of oversimplify in some ways, but I think the important thing is you get a sense of how broad it is. So, in its simplest form, cities and the county are going to be required to help with food recovery. So that is identifying who the generators of food are that could be diverted into some sort of food recovery, food banks or things like this. And this would be now including grocery stores instead of throwing material out that they're going to have to divert it to a local food bank. And the cities are now going to be required to actually monitor and track that material is indeed being diverted. And likewise for post-consumer, they're expecting to see that all cities are going to be establishing route collections for purposes of collecting organic material at the curb from commercial generators as well as residential, and getting it to a food process, or not a food processing, excuse me, some form of organic composting or anaerobic digestion. And so, these are pretty large in scale, large in terms of, cost. So there's also the cost of the containers. With respect to the enforcement component at the local level, they're expecting that there are going to be staff members or contracted out to the franchise haulers to be doing periodic lid flipping just to ensure that people are being compliant. And if they're not, how are you going to be enforcing your residents to make sure that they're not putting food waste into garbage cans? Take it out a step further, there's procurement requirements so that jurisdictions are using renewable natural gas, or they are taking the compost that has been generated and using it onto city properties. So it's very broad. And then of course, along with all of this is the necessary record keeping that Cal Recycle is going to be requiring. And it's going to be very onerous. I mean, it fundamentally turns waste management on its ear. And I know Linda and I have been talking about this for a while, and I think unfortunately a lot of people just thought, oh, it's about standardizing containers. It's not standardizing containers. It's actually all the services that go along with those containers. So it is big, it is broad, it's more than any one person here or even really one entity can take on. It's going to require all of us working together in order to find some viable solutions. I do just want to note, not for a shock factor, other than it is a bit of a shock factor, City of San Diego is, they have kind of a unique setting in which they have the People's Ordinance, which means if you've got a resident that lives alongside public roadway, you do not pay for solid waste services, right? So the costs are all picked up through commercial, and that's how it's all subsidized. And with these changes, they're seeing their budget appropriation for purposes of container replacement only is $30 million. And it is, across the state, you're seeing individual communities wrestling with what the cost is going to be. So if there's an opportunity where we could be working together in which we are reducing the overhead in terms of the administrative functions, in terms of the enforcement, in terms of working with our franchise haulers, anywhere that we can for the economy of scale to demonstrate that we are being, not just compliant, but, we are working in good faith towards meeting these objectives. This is the first place where we can start doing that.
All right, thank you.
Director Wilson, did you have any other questions?
I just asked, isn't that what I just?
That was all, right? I just didn't want to.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Just based on what you said, Director Duffy, just a quick question. Have the grocers or the food bank been involved in any of these conversations yet, or is that kind of forthcoming in the process?
I believe it's going to be forthcoming right now. All of your respective staff members have been trying to get their heads wrapped around what this 1383 is. Board members not being so, familiar with the details. Likewise, many staff members are either. I mean, even for the transfer stations, we're going to have new requirements. So we're trying to understand all of that. As Supervisor Bone is aware, one of the big questions is the mandatory collection within cities and counties. And so what does that mean, mandatory collection, and how far out? And so there are some rural areas of Humboldt County that it's not likely going to be feasible. And Cal Recycle, unfortunately, at this juncture, juncture has been giving some contradictory information. Staff say everybody has to do it. The director is saying, well, we think that there might be some, wiggle room around this. So it's something that RCRC and the CSAC has been focusing in on, as well as some other cities that do have some rural areas. Some of them are a little interesting in the configurations, but it's really pretty big. It's really big.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, or would someone like to entertain a motion?
Something's happening out in the highway.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we authorize staff to coordinate with the local task force to develop and circulate a request for proposal for a regional SB 1383 action plan.
Thank you. Director Hogan made a motion. Does anyone have a second? I'll second. Okay. So let's see. Let's go ahead and take the vote. Director, Board Member Bone?
Yep.
Wilson?
Yep.
Hogan?
Yes.
And I also vote aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Just for form, can we see if there's any public comment on this item?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought we already did that. Okay, does anyone from the public wish to make comment on this? Many apologies. Oh, Director Wise.
I just wanted to say, I was thinking about what Robin was saying about being on it last year. I just want to say, I think it would have been really hard on them to understand what was going to be required, since the rulemaking wasn't finished since November. So, Leslie, I want you to know, I think Robin's being hard on herself.
Thank you. And Maggie, did you also have public comment?
Well, just I'm listening to Director Wilson, and just for a little bit of context, a lot of the focus on California legislation that is waste related in the 70s was it was kind of driven by tourism and California's embarrassment that there was litter all along our highways. And there's a lot, SB 650, a lot of stuff. And so instead of throwing it out your car window, here's some recycling alternatives. Then it went into the 1980s, and by 1989, it was Californians were concerned about real estate and landfill space. And oh my God, we're not going to have enough landfill space. So a lot of legislation was focused on, and a new term was developed. Landfill diversion, my least favorite term. And now in the past 10 to 15 years, it's about Californians' concerns about flooding and fires and everything caused by global warming. And so SB 1383 is born out of that concern and the state legislature. And that's why you're getting this landmark, comprehensive, much bigger and badder legislation that will have much more impact than we've had since AB 939 in 1989. That was big then, but it's not about landfill diversion anymore. It's about waste being an important, it's climate action, things that we can do to reduce waste, and in particular, the methane that comes from landfills. So I don't know if that context helps a little bit.
Thank you.
Leslie, I'd like to add one more thing. And after the meeting is completed, CalRecycle did put together, it's a short flyer for elected officials about what SB 1383 is. I will have that forwarded to all of you. I took a look at it and it's a little clunky. So make sure, you just, when you have some time so you could go through, it'll hyperlink the different things. So I'll do that along with the video that Cal Recycle put together. And I'll get that sent around to all of you.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other members of the public wish to speak? And again, many apologies for that. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the Eureka Recycling Center operations and management, provide direction for CRV redemption services. And again, we'll begin with a staff report from Director Duffy.
Great, thank you. We're actually going to go ahead and just give you a very short slide. We're happy to work in tandem. Tyler, are you up and ready? Tyler is going to be sharing the screen, and we will go from there. Okay, so basically, we are recommending that the board is going to be receiving the information about the operations and management of the Eureka Recycling Center to consider and provide direction for two options related to California redemption or CRV as appropriate. Next slide, please. The Eureka Recycling Center handles two broad categories of recyclable materials that have been dropped off by members of the public and businesses. General recyclables and CRV beverage containers. Additionally, the material that is diverted from the tip floor, which is where all solid waste comes in, is also moved over to the Eureka Recycling Center, where we then sort it and bale it and then market those materials. So the photograph that is taken on the right side of the screen there, that is a commercial business that comes in pretty regularly, and they have a lot of cardboard. So instead of having that cardboard go onto the floor and get put into the push, your staff diverts it and gets it over to the recycling center. Next slide, please. And Tyler, go ahead and click on the movie right here. So general recyclables include source separated materials such as cardboard, glass, plastic, scrap metal, tin, as well as Freon and non-Freon appliances and electronic waste. Recology and Humboldt Sanitation also drop off appliances to the Eureka Recycling Center, and HWMA employees dismantle the appliances in order to remove the electronics, the fluids, and Freon gases. And then they prepare the e-waste or televisions for shipping, and they bale materials and secure transportation to specified brokers from Portland to San Francisco. The scan that you just saw shows the interior of the recycling center. This video was taken on Tuesday morning, and the area is about 35,000 square feet. And so it gives you a sense, and all of our operations have to take place undercover. And when our material is baled, it also has to remain undercover. Next slide, please. Click one more time. So, annually we're processing over 3,000 tons of those general recyclables and 350 tons of electronic waste. Or what this translates into is about 2 to 3 semi-flatbeds of material per week. E-waste is about 1 a week, about every 3 to 4 weeks. And we have 2 to 3 of baled cardboard or plastics or aluminum or other metals that go out. And it goes out in segregated loads because they're all going to different locations. So the cardboard is heading north to Oregon, and some of our other material heads south into the Bay Area. And, over the last year, and I know that this is not an uncommon issue, but over the last year, it has become increasingly difficult to secure transportation of our material to market because there is an ongoing shortage of trucks and drivers, and it's been industry wide. And so that is resulting in an increase of baled material or e-waste being stored inside the recycling center. And this is, so when we've talked about some of our constraints in our operations, it's because first we've got loose material, then we get it all densified, and we still have to store that indoors until we're able to get a truck. And like I say, we've had some challenges. I do want to note that our primary transporter in large has been Bettendorf Trucking, and they've been absolutely amazing in trying to work with us in order to get things out. We do have a couple of other transporters that we are able to use periodically, but if you've got some more questions about that, I know that Eric can speak ad nauseum for it, because it's been something he's been really challenged with. Next slide, please. So as you are all aware, until March of 2020, the Eureka Recycling Center also provided CRV buyback services as a state certified redemption center. Consumers have been able to redeem their containers and recoup their fee. Prior to March of 2020, HWMA accepted approximately 1,000 tons annually of CRV materials. So that's the peat, that's the glass, and the aluminum containers. They were then baled and then transported and marketed for recycling purposes. The photograph that you see here is the material that was collected over the 3 days that we were open in September. So that's basically a 3-day volume. It does translate into about a truck a week. But again, you have to remember that plastic goes to plastic, or where it's going to go for the source. So depending on where the material is going to get shipped, you're looking for those containers. In 2019, HWMA paid out about $1.2 million to CRV customers, with an average daily of 225 customers and an average payout of about $4,500 a day. Those 225 customers, we have to take individual weights for each material type that comes in. So what it translates into, if you bring in plastic and your aluminum cans and your glass, each one of those items is going to be grouped together, weighed, a transaction ticket generated, and then you have the singular payout. But we have an average of 450 individual daily weights that are captured. The aluminum and plastic is baled and hauled by HWMA and are contracted trucks to market, and glass has been processed and hauled by a certified processor. In this case, we've had a long contract with Humboldt Sanitation. Humboldt Sanitation, at the point that they became a decertified, they are no longer able to perform the processing and hauling. So we don't yet have a way to be handling the glass that would be coming in. And that's one of our challenges that we've been working on for a while. Next slide, please. So the actions to date, go ahead and just click on through. We've been working closely with Assemblymember Woods and McGuire's office for the introduction of legislation that would enable the temporary use of appointments for CRV redemption activities. Because again, if we reopen, HWMA at this juncture would be the only certified recycling center. At this juncture, Recology and Humboldt Sanitation are not yet ready to open. So we've got to find some way in which we would be able to manage the number of people as well as the volume of material, while still being able to provide acceptance of appliances, general recycling, and e-waste. We have been coordinating closely with other private operators for the resumption and or establishment of certified recycling centers. And we do have Dave Slagle on the line, and he will be speaking with us shortly. We've been participating in the local grocers group in discussions with CalRecycle and state representatives about the shortcomings and the necessary legislative fixes to the existing bottle bill. And we have been expressing strong support of Assemblymember Woods' bill, AB 1311, which would allow CRV redemption sites to temporarily operate using a appointment model, I do want to note that particular piece of legislation made it through another hurdle just the other day for the Environmental Committee. It is moving forward without opposition. It will likely get taken up for a vote after the summer recess. It'll come up for vote by the group in mid-August, I believe, is what the time frame that they're looking at right now.
Director Duffy?
Yes.
Question. When that does pass, which it probably will, that won't change our position on taking recycling though, will it?
That's what we're asking you guys to help us with tonight.
Okay.
Okay. So then there are currently 58 grocers and obligated retailers who are now providing CRV buyback services. They were not providing these services prior to September. So these were all of the sites that are currently on CalRecycle's website. If you're aware that they're on the website and they are not performing the service, then CalRecycle is asking that people inform them of that because they are avoiding fees. With the adoption of the budget, the board did freeze 2 material diversion technician positions at the Eureka Recycling Center. Next slide, please. Thank you. So first, go ahead and go click. There's 2 options that we're asking for the board. One is whether HWMA is to continue with our CRV certification and operations efforts, or to support Hambro's recycling request to suspend, that HWMA suspend our CRV certification efforts. HWMA is assuming that until other private operators become certified by CalRecycle, that we would be providing CRV redemption services as the only certified redemption center for a period of time. And prior to submitting a certification application to CalRecycle, as well as our readiness plan, there are 3 constraints that we are wrestling with. So first is the, go ahead and click, appointment-based CRV redemption. As described, the Eureka Recycling Center lacks the physical operational or storage area to both manage the CRV for the entire county and continue to provide recyclable drop-off and processing services for those used appliances, recyclables, and e-waste. And the governor's approval of 1311 could assist greatly in alleviating those constraints, because we would be able to manage people that are coming in. And we are working to secure glass processing and transportation contractors. The second issue is that we would need to be talking about funding for the staffing and software purchase. To resume the CRV activities, we would need to have the funds that would unfreeze those 2 material diversion technician positions, plus an additional 3 full-time equivalent positions. Regardless of the site, you heard it's similar with Hambro. Last month, they're looking at about 6 to 8 people. We too will need to have 6 to 8 people. That's just what the volume and different duties will require. So we'd be looking at needing to add a couple of positions to manage the CRV activities and the appointment scheduling. That could be theoretically a temporary type effort. And then potentially purchase of appointment scheduling software, which actually I don't think is going to be very expensive, but just the interest of transparency. The third issue for us is to secure a certified glass processing and transportation service transporter. With the decertification of Humboldt Sanitation, we need to have a new certified processor. And the issue here is we don't have the space under cover in which to store the material in a segregated manner such that we're able to aggregate the amount of material necessary to have transported to the market. So we could have, 50, 50, 50 in terms of weight, 50, 50, 50. Typically, the things have all been intermixed, and we have to keep those colors segregated. I don't think I said that right, so forgive me for the clunkiness there. But the upshot is we need to be able to densify the glass, store the glass, and then secure the transportation services. And if we are not able to find a certified processor who would do that, we would be looking potentially at purchasing a truck and the hiring of a licensed truck driver. That is not an option that I'm really thrilled about. I actually have a couple of other ideas if we end up going down that pathway, because we're just not in the business of running trucks, quite frankly. So, so provided that AB 1311 is approved by the governor and HWMA is able to procure glass processing and a transporter, the Eureka Recycling Center could theoretically open approximately 90 to 120 days following the submittal of a CRV certification application to CalRecycle. The second option, which of course you heard, and realize that in my staff report, I erroneously wrote May. I don't know what happened to the month of June, but we heard from Dave Slagle and Randy Scott from Hambro in June, not May. And they outlined a strategy where they would secure a suitable site, submit certification for CRV redemption services, and perform CRV buyback at a centralized location. Hambro's determined that they will need as much material as possible for the necessary return on investment, and they have requested that the HWMA board basically direct that we not resume CRV buyback services at HWMA, the recycling center, for an undetermined period of time. I do know that we heard we'll do a 10-year non-compete, but for right now, that was a little early. And so they were in terms of being able to do something like that. And so we wanted to get just a first blush discussion with the board. Hambro representatives have stated that they anticipate potentially opening as soon as late August. And this is what they had indicated at the June meeting, and that they would get the necessary site approval and CalRecycle certification is secured. So should the board decide that they want to move forward with option one, we would recommend that a special meeting be held in either August or September for the consideration of staffing and funding approval for CRV. Should the board select option two as a preference, then HWMA staff would suspend our ongoing planning efforts around the resumption of CRV services for a minimum of 6 months, so that we could provide Hambro an opportunity to demonstrate that they have site control, that they've been able to secure the equipment and the staff and the certification and the initiation of operations. If after 6 months Hambro has not opened, then HWMA staff would return to the board for purposes of providing an update.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. Probably take that now with all the crap.
And receive further direction from the board. And that concludes my part of the presentation. And I would just invite Mr. Slagle. I don't know if Randy is in the room with you also to address the board, but the board wasn't able to take action on this at the last meeting. And this is simply bringing this item back forward so the board can take direction accordingly.
Randy's here. He's got my back.
Okay.
Yes, I don't come to you tonight with a heavy heart, but I'm a lot more disappointed than I was last month after having discussions with some of the other CRV centers in Humboldt County that are considering reopening. That makes us much more disinclined, to enter into this venture. It will cost us $300,000 to $500,000 to put this project on the road if we want to do it right. We may come online at a lesser level to see how it goes. But my hopes were that we could come down in a big way and provide CRV recycling for Humboldt County. Apparently that's not in the cards. People may be considering it. We are seeing an improvement actually in salvage prices. So the other operators may take that into consideration, along with possibly some incentives coming down the line from CalRecycle. That's something else that we'll be looking at. It was my goal to do this without government subsidies, but to mitigate the risk, that now the risk is a little bit more of a concern than it was a month ago. I think it would be prudent for us to see how some of the legislation that's currently awaiting the summer recess when they come back in September or late August to see how that develops. So in addition to that, we're having a little trouble with our site. The site that I really liked is being considered for sale, and there's another party looking at that site. I won't go any further than to say that, but we're continuing to look for a site then in addition to that site in Humboldt County. I'm confident that we could be online relatively quickly, but now we're pushing it back. It certainly won't be late August because we need to wait and see what the legislature does as far as how they're going to deal with underserved areas, and whether it's going to be operational assistance or these pilot projects and some capitalization assistance. So with that, we're going to continue to look for a site. I like Jill's idea of 6 months. It probably will take that now at this point to come to fruition. I will continue to discuss with other recycling centers or that previously operated to see what their plans are. Are they looking at opening within a 6-month period, a 12-month, 18-month, 3-year? I'm sure they can't pin that down to market fluctuations, but that's a discussion we need to have. We could come down there if one of the 3 was still active, but if all 2 of the 3 weren't involved in stepping down for a period of time, then we don't think it would be successful. So we'll continue to have discussions, we'll continue to look for a site, and we'll continue to wait on the legislature to see what they come up with as far as plans for underserved areas. You folk in Humboldt County have done a great job of rattling their cage, but it takes more than a rattled cage. It takes a legislature approval along with the governor signing it. It sounds like it's going to come out just in mid-September when the recalls will be going on. So who knows what's going to happen. That's where we stand. Any questions, we're willing to answer those.
Thank you, David. Any questions from members of the board?
Do we, through the chair, we collect a certain amount of money per ton for recycling, right, Jill?
Collect from whom?
Our per ton basis.
Okay.
Our per ton base, basically the public.
Yeah, you're referring to our waste management fee?
Yes.
Okay, yes, we do. And we've reduced it by, Tyler, you'll have to remind me, it was a little over $2.50. We reduced that as part of the budget. That was in the budget this last year so that it was reduced. The remainder of the money does go forward to help support the overall recycling programs, which includes, of course, no charge drop off for appliances with the exception of the Freon containing items as well as e-waste. So the money that is continuing to be collected is being used to support those services to the public. We did reduce, Tyler, do you have that number?
I am working on that.
Okay, great. He'll get it to you in just a minute. So we did reduce that as part of the budget, and that was one of our efforts to help keep our budget with no change. So you are correct. I just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same pot of money because it's different than curbside recycling.
Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for David Slagle. If things, can you hear me okay, David?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. If things, go as well as possible with the legislature in, August, September, what would be sort of your estimated timeline? Let's say, everything lines up exactly how you want it to. What would be your estimated timeline for opening a site?
Probably 3 months, so we'd hope to be rolling before the end of the year, but I'm getting an education and patience, I guess, as this goes along. I was hoping, and we had some discussions today, that the plans were going to backdate it. If we came on after July 1st, they would be willing to reimburse us for the funds that we expended. The people we were working with weren't confident of that at this time. If they were, we would continue to march forward again based on conversations with the Fortuna and McKinleyville people.
So through the chair, the conversation that David is referring to, there was a meeting that was scheduled to be held with Assemblymember Woods' staff, as well as some representatives from Ming's Recycling and some lobbyists. And there was some conversation around both the bill 1454, in addition to a trailer bill, which is to provide some funding for recycling centers as well as haulers. And so this is an ongoing negotiation which is occurring. And I think Mr. Slagle was hoping that they'd be able to avail to some of the funding if it was made available, and if it would be able to be applied retroactively. The advice that they shared today was because of some recent machinations on a couple pieces of legislation, they felt that it wouldn't be prudent to go out. If you go ahead and expend the money, it would be done at your own risk. And unfortunately, the conversation that we had ended up having to be abbreviated because of another pressing issue. So we are going to be having that the discussion continue tomorrow morning. I haven't seen an invite come through for that yet, Dave. So if you've got it, send it to me also. I haven't seen it yet. So there we are. But some of the money that would be available would be to help establish recycling centers, just to offset the cost involved with developing.
Any other questions for either Director Duffy or for David?
Chair, I have a question.
Go for it, Frank.
It's hard to make out what Mr. Slagle was saying. If I did get it correctly, it's really basically up in the air because of the legislation and due to the cost, without knowing where that's at. So I really don't know what's going on in reality. Is that what I heard through all of this broken up conversation?
No closer.
If I could add, in addition,
it's still, is it just me that's not getting the message? I mean, I'm not hearing, or is it?
David, you need to turn something off. You've got something on in your world.
I do?
No, you're fine, Frank. Dave, you're coming across really garbled. So maybe if you slow your speech, the words will come through a little better.
Okay, was that slow my speech or slow my speech?
It's not his speech. It's something. It sounds like it's something electronic.
Yeah, it is.
Sounds like you have an extra speaker on.
Which one?
Turn that one on.
This one?
No, the big one.
This one? This one?
I mean, can anybody else summarize, I guess, a response to my question? It's basically an up in the air thing.
We're no closer to anything than we were 6 months ago.
That's exactly what I would think was interpreting. Thank you, Mr. Bones.
I wouldn't say that. My point that I didn't get across apparently was if the other two recycling centers in Humboldt County were not going to come back online, we would be inclined to continue to move forward.
David, what are the other two? Are you talking Eel River and McKinleyville? Or are you talking Willow Creek?
Eel River and McKinleyville.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought we just got a report that McKinleyville let everything lapse.
They are decertified like we are.
Yes.
And everybody, I mean, one of the reasons that you saw people moving towards decertification was so that they didn't get any violations that would be issued. And because when you submit an application, Cal Recycle takes a look to see whether or not you've got any violations that have been issued to determine whether or not they will certify you. So everybody decertified for purposes of being able to maintain their good standing. And so Humboldt Sanitation and Recology and HWMA could submit the applications for certification. I'm not aware of any time frame that they're looking at.
I have a couple questions. Let's see. Has there been any, especially since Director Wise is here as well, has there been any look in collaboration with Recology for transport or addressing the kind of crushing of the glass and those kinds of things?
There has. And she too has some space constraints out at their site. And, I can let Linda speak to it directly. We've had several conversations around this, but it has to be segregated from their main pile. So if it's HWMA material, it has to be segregated as HWMA material, as well as segregated by color. So the regulations, you think it's really simple. You just take in material and then you just like give somebody back a nickel. There's a lot that's happening behind the scenes that we're all required to meet that are really challenging. And this is one of them. So we did talk to Linda. She indicated that they currently have a truck that goes out about once a day carrying material from their Samoa facility. And of course, she says, at this point, they don't have the space at their location to enable us the ability. The second piece is, as we know with Humboldt Sanitation, the more you're moving material around, the more costs you incur. So we really want to make sure that we're finding cost-effective ways to be handling it. And glass is just really a challenge. Linda, would you add anything else?
Yeah, you said that correctly, and at our Fortuna site, even though we segregate our glass, it's very little and it's outdoors, and it is a material that Humboldt Sanitation had a system to deal with in the space, and we just don't have that. I wish I could help because I certainly would. I want to also go back to our not making a commitment to not getting into the recycling. That was the question, and I can't do that. That's like if there was a milk shortage with all the grocery stores, and Foster Farm had the milk, and Lucerne, they would be asking Lucerne not to get into the business. So, I can't make that commitment. We certainly would look at it from time to time because we do want to make services easy and accessible to the residents in Southern Humboldt. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, Director Wise, related to that? I mean, have you been looking at the situation in Humboldt and in Eureka and, in Northern Humboldt and considering kind of getting into the business, so to speak?
I think that we wouldn't open anything that wasn't already existing. That's where it would be. It would be the easiest for us and the most familiar for the residents. But talking about the Fortuna and Redway facility, I just cannot commit to not doing that.
Thank you. And then just another question, I think, for Director Duffy. Do you have an estimated cost of like how much the equipment needed for glass processing would be?
Not really. In the early days, it was a matter of the glass was put down on the floor with a loader driven over it. All you're doing is breaking the glass, right? And you're driving it back and forth in order to break it up and bringing it down to manageable sizes so that you can densify it, get rid of as much airspace as possible. We no longer have that floor space because we are now storing treated wood waste and mattresses and other items that we have been diverting. And you know, our real challenge, as we've talked about in the past, is that we're simply we're bursting at the seams in terms of our existing operation, which again is why we were looking towards the acquisition of the other property that was just to the east of us. So that is, you know, right there. That's what one of our big things. There could be some other mechanical equipment. I don't have a sense of what those costs would be. Eric may have that off the top of his head. You know, but we would be needing to find some way in which to densify that material. And so it's that's really it is, I can't say that it's second to, but it is equivalent to trying to manage the amount of material that would be coming in.
And I suppose one last question, you know, were there to be funds available in August, September? I'm assuming that, you know, Recology or HWMA may also be competitors for those funds if, you know, if like our board directed HWMA or et cetera to proceed.
I would imagine so. The language has, you know, been moving around a little bit. There's been some negotiations with the haulers, you know, and in this case, I want to make it really clear that when we're saying haulers, we're talking primarily a lot of the larger firms in the Los Angeles area that are seeing an opportunity to augment some funding that they've got. So, you know, for the curbside collection, that there'd be some additional funding that would be going into the curbside recycling to help support the processing of those kinds of facilities, similar to the Recology's facility. And then, of course, some monies for the establishment of recycling centers proper. I don't know that that money would be available immediately. I don't know what that would look like. Cal Recycle has a tendency to hold on to things for a bit longer. So I suspect that HWMA would be eligible, but I don't think that that's been our constraint. Our constraint has been managing material that would be coming in and the glass. If there's a way that we could get some additional monies to help offset any of our costs, that would be great, but that's not the deal breaker for us.
Any other questions from members of the board?
Yeah, is it possible that we can post the 58 other people that we talk about that are taking recycling in Humboldt County on our website so we can let people know, take this there? Because I know that will probably keep 38 of those new enforcement guys busy, because I think that's where those guys are going, since they only take 5 cans and 10 cans and everything else. But if they're going to avoid their $100 a day that's going to Cal Recycle, then let's put them to work.
So that was actually a question that was asked by me of staff early on. And when we had like 8 people that had signed up. And so we've been having, I think we have a link. If we don't have the link, we'll get it there. But we've been sending people to the actual site itself because it's constantly being updated. And I want to make sure that people are going to the horse's mouth in order to hear what is present. So we have been providing that information as people have been contacting us. I'll just go ahead and make a note that we do have a link on our website that will take you to the Cal Recycle site itself.
All right, and with that, I know Mr. Slagle and them have been down here looking for a site, because I've been looking for them too. I know there's an effort being made. I don't know if somewhere in there, if we could participate in helping them get underwritten to get up and running, because I'm tired of hearing about this and we keep talking about it. And I know I'm redundant as hell. I voted never to get out of it, and I'll probably do the same thing. And we heard all the reasons why we can't do it in your presentation today. So we only have one option, and that's number 2, because number 1 has been told hell will freeze over if we pick that. So, so I will be back here in a few months doing this same dance, but I appreciate the report.
Are there any other questions, or should I go ahead and open it up to public comment?
I just have one quick question.
Great. Go.
Am I understanding that the comment about the 58 sites that are supposed to be taking recycle aren't, or they're only taking 5 cans, whatever it takes to suffice the minimum requirement or something to get by? Is that what's going on, or what am I hearing on that?
So that's a very fair question. And I think the answer is it seems to run the gamut. Some places are accepting CRV buyback on specific hours, and they have a limit of 50 cans. Some places have done a limit of like $2, not to exceed $2 in CRV. So, I can't say who is doing what level of, because I'm not that familiar with it, other than, people say, I took my material here, or I showed up on a day where they're not letting us take the CRV, so I had to go back. Can't you make them change that? It's like, no, you have to, talk with Cal Recycle about that. So if you'd like, I'll also send you the link. I can send all of you the link to the Cal Recycle in-store redemption site as well. I've got a big list of some things to send out.
It is on the website, Jill. I just got it from our website, and it does link right to it. Yeah.
Okay.
So
there are 52 right now.
Is it 52? Okay. And that's the
yeah, it changes.
What I'm trying to get, I hear about, I see, I'm taking, so-and-so's taking them too. But is the reality side of this is that they're really not. We're really not taking, CRV is not being redeemed locally. Is that correct?
It's not absolute. In some places, people are able to redeem their containers at a small volume. What you're not going to see are people who have had months or a year's worth of CRV containers stored on site. They're not going to be able to get it into a grocery store because the grocery stores don't have the space in which to accept, to store, and then ship out. So that, the program was intended to act such that you would pick up, your 6-pack of Pepsi. And then after they were done, you would bring that 6-pack of Pepsi, back, just those aluminum containers. So you didn't see that large volume of material. It was more manageable. We also didn't have the number of the beverages that are now available on the market. And it has become more onerous for those grocers and other obligated retailers to manage the material. And of course, you started seeing recycling centers getting more involved because there was a profit margin at one time. It was pretty sizable, and the program needs to be amended so that it can meet the challenges that we have today. And one of the bills that David was referring to was SB 38, which would create a stewardship program for the beverage containers. And I think that initially, when they were having some conversations about whether to branch into Humboldt County, there was a concern that if that fundamentally overhauled the entire program, what did that do to them in terms of their investment? SB 38 right now is kind of in a place of suspension, but there are some really good ongoing conversations that are happening, but it's not going to be happening in the next few years, despite the fact that we desperately need to have an overhaul of our beverage container program.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, we'll open the floor for public comment. Any members of the public wish to speak on this issue? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any members of the board wish to make comments or entertain a motion? I mean, I guess I'll speak briefly. You know, I was very hopeful, you know, hearing from Hambro last month, and certainly, you know, I understand their hesitation, and it's, you know, I'm sure they're disappointed, and you know, I would imagine many of us are disappointed that, you know, this is continues to be a really complex and kind of burdensome task. You know, because of that, I'm leaning towards kind of option number one, but I'm also wondering if, you know, it makes sense to like see what happens with the legislation in August, you know, like whether it makes sense to have a special meeting prior to the legislation, or whether it would make sense to kind of, as soon as we find out, you know, like, let's schedule a special meeting. That's where my thoughts are right now. I'm curious perspectives from other members of the board.
In my sort of assessment of this whole thing, even though Hambro seems to be less optimistic than they were last month, they do still seem more willing or in a better position than we are. Given that we have space constraints, and we also handle a variety of other material. And so, yeah, I would lean more towards us holding off on planning for the next 6 months, and then letting them see if they can still get something going.
Other thoughts?
I'll second that because I was just gonna stay out of it because we have no other option. And it's not gonna do anything anyway, I don't think. I'd like to see a bigger commitment from us helping Hambro find a location, and maybe even underwriting it for the benefit of our customers, but anyway.
Director Bennett, I'm not sure or Director Hogan, did you make a motion, or were you?
No, I didn't make an official motion. I was just giving my thoughts. I could make a motion, but I thought we wanted to just wait and hear from Frank and Rex first.
Sure. Frank?
What do I say? I like the option where we load up a truck and trailer, and we take it to Cal Recycle's office and dump it on their front lawn. I've been with that for some time, and I'm still in favor of that. However, that's probably not going to work. I think we need to, one is wait for what the legislation says, and two is to go along to try to support Hambro, work something out. Because again, we've been over this. There's no space. There's no people, there's no trucks, there's nobody to haul the glass. I think we'd be foolish to jump into this as HWMA and just make a bigger mess of ourselves than trying to help somebody that seemingly has a better idea and seems to have been able to make it work. So I'm for supporting. And if we need to if you need a motion to that effect, I'll make one if that's what you're looking for.
I'll second that one. I'll second anyone. We're not going to get.
I make a motion that we support Hambro be successful in moving forward with item number 2.
Do we have a motion, and Director Bone, did you second that motion?
I'm pretty clear. Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because it wasn't quite.
I was going to second anything. We're not getting anywhere.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. You know, I have something else to say, but I wanted anyone else want to speak to this issue on the board? I still am hesitant, especially hearing from Hambro just now. It's hard for me to say that they seem more capable of doing it than us, based on the statements they just made. So I do feel hesitant on like waiting 6 months to kind of see. And in my mind, I think it would be preferable to kind of postpone the decision until we see what the legislation is, and then actually revisit this as a board in, at our September meeting. That's kind of where my perspective is. So, just because it seems like nothing's going to happen between now and September anyway. And I think that Hambro may even have more to tell us at that point, rather than just kind of waiting to see what they figure out or not figure out. I don't know. That's where my mind is. So
I do want to offer just one thing, which is even if the legislature takes an action on any of the legislation, it will not likely be signed until late September. With the governor facing recall. He's not expected to be signing pieces of legislation. So not to throw water on this, but I want to kind of don't want to have you guys come back to this and have you be in the same place of, but we don't have anything yet. So
put it through the chair, to put it in perspective, even if the legislation is all rosy, it's not going to change our position one iota. We're still not going to have room. We're still not going to have people because the legislation isn't going to give us room, people, or trucks. So it's not going to change anything. It just may be more advantageous for Hambro. So by doing this now, it gives these guys an opportunity to start moving forward.
Yes, I'm curious if the maker of the motion would be willing to entertain a friendly amendment to add to that motion to also put this item back on the agenda at the October meeting, so that we may, as a board, reflect on potential changes in the legislation and, hear from Hambro again, like an update.
I'm not sure what if I need that as an amendment. What I was saying to support Hambro and move, I guess that's what I said, it was to support Hambro, make something happen, which would, I still don't see us doing it. I don't know what you want. I'm actually don't know what you want.
So is that a no? just so I'm clear.
Yeah, that sounds like a no.
Okay. Okay.
I heard.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote on that motion. Director Hogan.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Director Bone.
Sure.
And I'm voting no on that motion.
Good.
For the record.
Good for you.
Thanks. Okay. Motion carries, and we will move on to the next item. Where are we? Too many papers. Okay. Okay, it's our standing item of board member reports. So do any board members have anything to report? Director Hogan's shaking her head no. Frank?
Yeah, we're going to have Wildwood Days this year is the word that came out with for Riddell. We're not going to have a muster because of the water shortage, but we're going to move ahead with the with Wildwood Days. So we all need something to do in, I think it's early August, about the first week of August. And you hear the thing saying to come on down and go to a barbecue and hang out in Goodrell Dell, we welcome you down here.
Thanks, Director Wilson. That sounds fun. Director Bone.
No, nothing.
Okay. Let's see. And I do have just a brief report. I hosted a meeting with, gosh, about 7 different groups that do kind of beautification, cleanup related efforts in the city of Eureka, including Keep Eureka Beautiful, Robin Prasker with the city's neighborhood beautification program, Pack Out Green Team, the Trail Stewards, Project Eureka, the street art program. One of the things we talked about, just a variety of our efforts around kind of beautification and cleaning up and, trash, of course, litter specifically was one of the things that came up quite a bit. And something we just pondered and thought that there could be room for improvement upon was just advertising of current programs that are available from HWMA in terms of just things that people can, recycle for free or for low cost. Also, it seems like maybe, just due to the large number of couches that end up on the streets in Eureka, or, and that people may not always, and I realize we're not your board, Director Wise, but, that people just may not be aware of some of the great free programs that are available in terms of, pickup of bulky items, free recycling opportunities. So that was just an issue we pondered that I would love to keep in the conversation and just see if we can kind of work to address in some way. That's my report. But it was a great meeting, and there are lots of people who are just really committed to doing good things for Eureka. So there's that. Okay, we'll move on to item number 8, the Executive Director's Report.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just got a note that the house behind our house where my son lives in McKinleyville is on fire. So find out what's going on there. I might need to take a break. Real quick, with respect to treated wood waste, as detailed in the attached handout in your board packet, HWMA was granted our temporary variance for the acceptance of treated wood waste at the transfer station. So starting July 1st, we are again accepting that waste in the transfer station. There are a number of regulatory restrictions which HWMA and our customers have to adhere to. So that's one of the reasons why we gave you that handout. It actually is about a 7-page document that we're required to adhere by. It's pretty onerous, but that's the summary that we have. So we prepared a number of press releases, radio spots, updated the webpage, and provided training and information to all employees. So I think the important thing for purposes of our board members while they're talking to people about treated wood waste, we are the only transfer station right now that is accepting treated wood waste, and it cannot be mixed with solid waste and disposed at Dry Creek landfill, despite Dry Creek having received a variance from DEQ. California is requiring that the material be segregated, it's transported and disposed into designated areas of the landfill. So we are segregating and we are arranging for transport to the Anderson landfill, which is located, of course, south of Reading. I will tell you that we were a little concerned on the first day that we reopened because we had over 2,000 pounds of stockpile treated wood waste from a single customer that came in, followed by a number of additional heavy loads. So, that caused us to kind of do a moment of, if this continues, what are we going to do for space? So it appears that over the last week, we have actually seen an average of like 100 to 200 pounds a day. So we're hoping that that's going to be more normalized as time goes on. I do want to note that the Fortuna City Council did approve the household hazardous waste agreement. And of course, can't help but to just sort of re-emphasize, this is really represents a significant step towards regionalization efforts of enabling a non-member agency of some of our services services. And some of our board members may remember that this was a topic that had come up in the course of conversation with the Humboldt County Grand Jury. So it's taken us a few years to get there, but it's really great to see it now. Integrated waste management contract with the County of Humboldt. You know, the 5-year integrated waste management plan was prepared and submitted to the county. It was also provided as a courtesy copy to the Solid Waste Local Task Force at their meeting on Tuesday, and they'll have an opportunity to review that so that it'll be reviewed and approved by the task force in probably September, and it'll be submitted to Cal Recycle before December of 2021. We've done a number of other activities around some of the legislation. Our waste characterization study that took off, we did complete that second season study, and the data is now being analyzed, and we expect to have that report. It will come out in fall of 2021. We also expect that the findings of that report will be incorporated into the SB 1383 action plan. So things are lining up nicely. And, you know, and other than that, just continued ongoing support and coordination of the ED recruitment efforts. And with that, I'll just go ahead and ask if there's any other questions. We've got a number of different projects that we've been working on, but I'll just leave it there. Any questions? Okay. I would ask if you adjourn into closed session, can I just step out and just make a quick phone call and make sure that everything's safe over there? I'd appreciate it. Okay, great, thank you.
I was gonna offer, if I am made the host, then Jill, you can take care of whatever that emergency is.
Perfect.
But I want to remind Leslie to see if there's public comment in advance of our going into closed session.
I got it. I got it.
I know.
No, but I appreciate it. It never hurts to, yeah. So we are going to move to our next item, which is a closed session item, and which is the intention of the Board of Directors to meet in closed session for one item, and that is public employment, the Executive Director pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. But before we move into that closed session, are there any members of the public who would wish to speak on that item? So we'll open up public comment. Okay, I do not see anyone wishing to speak on that item, so we will close public comment and go ahead and move into the closed session. And thanks to everyone who attended the meeting tonight. We will report out of closed session at the end.
There we are. Sorry, everybody. Could not quite get what I needed to have happen there. Nancy, you are the host, and you all have a good evening.
Okay, I'm the host.